After the film ended, the night was quiet, but inside the hotel room the silence was heavy, almost too heavy to breathe. The film had ended hours ago, yet Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock found themselves sitting side by side, alone at a small wooden table by the window. The city lights outside were blurred by the glass, glowing like distant stars. Keanu leaned back in his chair, his hair still damp from the rain they had walked through after the premiere. His coat rested across the chair beside him, forgotten. Sandra sat across from him, her hands folded in front of her, the reflection of the city lights trembling in her eyes. There was something unspoken between them, something that had been building quietly for years, buried under work, under distance, under fear. The hook came quickly. Sandra finally whispered, "Why does it feel like we're still acting, even now?" Her voice was soft but steady. Keanu looked at her, and for the first time that evening, he didn't smile to cover what he felt. "Because maybe we never stopped," he answered. Her heart tightened. That simple line pulled her back into every scene they had once shared, every laugh, every pause when the camera stopped but the feeling didn't. She wanted to speak, but the words refused to come. Instead, silence sat between them like another person in the room. The conflict began here. Both of them had lived through storms of their own, heartbreaks and long years where life had felt empty despite the lights, the applause, the cameras. Keanu had carried grief that the world could only imagine. Sandra had hidden loneliness behind her smile, behind her strength. Tonight, the walls they had built to protect themselves were cracking. "People think we live in a world full of joy," Sandra said after a long pause. "But they don't see the nights when it feels like no one is really there." Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with honesty. Keanu's eyes softened. "You're not wrong. I've been there. I know that emptiness." He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table, and in that moment the atmosphere shifted. There was no audience here, no director telling them what to feel. It was just two people, both scarred by life, both searching for a safe place to rest their hearts. As the minutes passed, the air between them grew heavier, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was powerful. They could hear the hum of the city below, the faint sound of cars passing, but inside the room it felt like time had slowed. Sandra finally asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had chosen differently back then?" His answer came with a pause, a deep breath. Every day, the suspense grew. He had never admitted that before, not to her, not to anyone. Her chest ached at his words. She wanted to reach across the table, to hold his hand, to break the barrier that years of silence had built. But her fear stopped her. Fear of change, fear of hope, fear of what it would mean to finally let herself feel. Keanu noticed her hesitation. He saw the way her fingers trembled slightly, the way she bit her lip as if holding back a flood of words. "It's okay," he said quietly, his voice low and gentle. "You don't have to say it all tonight." That single sentence was filled with kindness. It was not pressure, not demand, just space. And in that space, Sandra felt something inside her shift. She had been strong for so long, but for the first time, she realized it was okay to be vulnerable. The emotional depth deepened as she whispered, "I don't want to lose this moment." "Not again." The weight of her words struck him. He didn't move too quickly, didn't break the fragile thread holding them together. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice steady. "Then don't. Stay here with me, just as you are." The story began to form its first twist here. For years, both had convinced themselves that timing had been wrong, that life had chosen separate roads for them. But now, in the stillness of the hotel room, those excuses felt small. What remained was raw, undeniable truth. The tension was real. Would they allow themselves to step into the unknown, or would fear push them apart again? Sandra wiped a tear she hadn't realized had escaped. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man the world worshipped, but the man who had carried loss, who had given kindness freely even when he had little left for himself. Keanu, in turn, saw her not as the star everyone admired, but as the woman who had fought through pain, who had stood tall even when her heart was breaking. This was not a scene written in a script. It was life. As the clock ticked softly on the wall, Sandra finally reached across the table. Her hand found his, hesitant but real. His fingers closed gently around hers, not too tight, not too loose, just enough to say, "I'm here." The moment was fragile, but it was powerful. Respect, humility, resilience, and kindness all lived within that single touch. The first part of their story had begun. The silence that spoke, the night grew deeper, and the lights of the city outside flickered like restless stars. In the quiet of the hotel room, their hands remained together on the table. Neither wanted to pull away. Neither wanted to break the fragile thread of connection that had taken so many years to resurface. Sandra's fingers trembled slightly, but she did not let go. She looked at Keanu, her voice almost a whisper. "Why did we wait so long to say the truth?" He took a slow breath before answering. "Because life doesn't always give us courage when we need it most. Sometimes it hides it, and we spend years trying to find it again." His words were simple, but they cut deep. Sandra felt them inside her chest, like echoes of all the choices she had made. She had chosen her career, her independence, her pride, but somewhere along the way, she had silenced her heart. A moment of suspense filled the air. The question was not only about the past, it was about tonight. Would they keep hiding behind the walls they had built, or would they finally let them fall? Keanu leaned back slightly, studying her face. He had known her for decades, seen her strength, her laughter, her pain. But tonight she looked different. Tonight she looked unguarded. "I used to think," he said quietly, "that kindness was enough. If I was kind, if I gave people space, if I stayed calm, maybe I wouldn't lose them. But life proved me wrong. I lost people anyway. I lost chances too. Maybe this is my chance not to lose again." Sandra felt tears burn her eyes. The honesty in his voice was raw. She had always admired his humility, but hearing him admit his fear of loss made her heart ache. She whispered, "You never lost me. I was always here, even if I pretended not to be." Those words changed the air in the room. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was alive, pulsing with unspoken promises. Then came the unexpected twist. Just as she thought he might smile, he shook his head slightly. "Don't say that unless you mean it, Sandra. I've lived too long with ghosts. I can't hold on to another one." She froze. His words were not angry, but they carried weight. He was asking her to be real, to stop hiding behind safe answers. Her heart pounded. She realized he deserved the truth, all of it, so she said it, trembling but strong. "I was scared. Scared that if I let myself fall, I would lose everything else. But tonight, sitting here with you, I finally understand. I already lost so much by staying silent. I don't want to lose you, too." The words spilled out, and once they were spoken, she felt lighter, as if the years of holding them back had finally broken apart. Keanu's eyes softened. His hand tightened slightly around hers, steady, grounding. "Then maybe it's time we stop running from what was always meant to be." The suspense grew again. Was this really the moment they would let go of the past? Was this the moment when the unspoken became real? Before she could answer, there was a knock on the door. The sound was sharp, breaking the fragile stillness. Both of them looked toward the door, startled. Sandra's hand slipped from his. The sudden intrusion felt like the world reminding them that nothing was ever simple. Keanu stood slowly, his calm never leaving him. "I'll get it," he said softly. He opened the door to find a hotel attendant standing there with an envelope. "This was left for you, Mr. Reeves," the attendant said politely. Keanu thanked him and closed the door, his expression unreadable as he returned to the table. He set the envelope down between them. Sandra looked at it nervously. "What is it?" He shook his head. "I don't know, but somehow, I feel like this changes the night." The envelope lay on the table, its seal unbroken, but its presence filled the room with new tension. Sandra whispered, "Are you going to open it?" Keanu met her eyes. "Not alone." He slid the envelope toward her. Their hands touched again as she reached for it. The moment felt symbolic. Whatever was inside, they would face it together. With a deep breath, Sandra broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. Her eyes widened as she read the first lines. Keanu watched her carefully. "What does it say?" Her voice shook as she read aloud. "To both of you, there is something you need to know. Something that was hidden long ago. Meet me tomorrow morning at sunrise. I will be waiting." She stopped, her heart racing. The letter was unsigned. Keanu leaned forward, his face calm but serious. "This isn't random. Someone wanted both of us to see this, and they knew tonight we would be together." Sandra's chest tightened. It felt impossible, almost unreal. After years of silence, after all the emotions finally spilling open, now a mystery stood at their door. But deep inside, she felt a strange sense of destiny. Maybe this was not an accident. Maybe the universe was finally pushing them toward something bigger than both of them. Keanu placed the letter gently back on the table. "We have a choice," he said. "We can ignore it and go back to silence. Or we can see where this path leads." Sandra looked at him, her tears drying as determination rose in her eyes. "I don't think we can go back anymore." The city outside continued to glow, but inside the room, something far brighter had begun. The sunrise meeting. The envelope still lay on the table, its presence heavy even after the words had been read. Sandra could not take her eyes off it. Keanu sat quietly, his calm face hiding the storm of thoughts moving inside him. The hotel room felt smaller now, as if the letter had pulled unseen walls closer around them. "Sunrise," Sandra whispered. "That's only a few hours away." Keanu nodded. "Whoever sent this, they knew the timing. They wanted us to feel the weight of waiting." The tension grew stronger with every passing minute. Sandra's heart raced, not only from the letter but from everything that had already happened tonight. The honesty, the vulnerability, the touch of his hand. Now the mystery of the letter mixed with emotions she was still learning to face. "What if it's a trick?" Sandra asked softly. "What if someone just wants to disturb us?" Keanu looked at her, steady as always. "Then we'll face it together. We've faced harder things in life than an envelope." The strength in his words gave her a strange sense of peace. He wasn't dismissing her fear. He was sharing it, carrying it with her. Time passed slowly. Neither of them slept. Instead, they sat near the window, watching the city lights fade as the sky shifted from black to deep blue. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was full of expectation, like the pause before a song begins. When the first hint of sunlight touched the horizon, they left the hotel room and stepped into the cool morning air. The city streets were quiet, washed with the pale glow of dawn. Sandra wrapped her coat tighter around herself, the breeze cutting against her skin. Keanu walked beside her, his steps calm, his eyes scanning the streets as if he expected the unknown at every corner. The letter had given no location, only "meet me at sunrise." Instinct guided them to the edge of the park across from the hotel, where the sun rose above a lake that reflected the sky. And there, on a wooden bench by the water, sat a man in a dark coat. His back was turned to them, but the way he sat, still, patient as if he had been waiting all night, sent a chill down Sandra's spine. Keanu slowed his pace. "That must be him." Sandra's voice was hushed. "But who is he? Why us?" They approached carefully. The man turned at the sound of their footsteps, and when his face became clear in the morning light, both Keanu and Sandra froze. He was older, his hair streaked with gray, his face lined with time. But there was something familiar in his eyes, something that struck both of them at once. "You don't know me," the man said quietly, "but I know you. I've known you both for a long time." His voice was calm but filled with a kind of sadness that immediately pulled at their hearts. Keanu spoke first. "You left that letter?" The man nodded. "Yes, I had to, because the truth has been hidden from you for too long. And if I stay silent any longer, it will be lost forever." Sandra's breath caught. "What truth?" The man looked at them, his gaze steady. "About the film you both starred in years ago. About the decision that was made behind closed doors. and about how it changed both of your lives without you ever knowing. Suspense hung in the air like a storm cloud. Keanu and Sandra exchanged a quick glance, their hands brushing for comfort. "What decision?" Keanu asked, his voice firm but controlled. The man's lips trembled before he spoke. The studio cut a part of the story. A scene that would have changed everything between you two. A scene that was never allowed to exist outside those walls. It was buried, erased. But I was there. I saw it. And I kept proof. Sandra's heart pounded. Memories rushed back. Scenes filmed late at night. Words exchanged on set that blurred the line between character and reality. She remembered the way her heart had felt alive. Not only because of acting, but because something real had existed under the surface. "Why tell us now?" she asked. The man's eyes glistened. "Because I'm dying. I don't have much time left. I carried this secret for too long, and it has haunted me every day. You deserve to know what was stolen from you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, worn envelope. It looked even older than the one they had received hours earlier. His hands shook as he handed it to Keanu. "Inside," he said, "is a copy of the script. The version before they changed it. The version that held your truth." Keanu hesitated before taking it. Sandra leaned closer, her chest tight with both fear and anticipation. The man lowered his gaze. "If you read it, you'll understand. But once you know, nothing will ever be the same." His words fell heavy in the crisp morning air. Keanu looked at Sandra, and she met his eyes. This was no longer about a film. This was about them. About the truth they had avoided for years, and the mystery that seemed to be pulling them closer. Without a word, Keanu slipped the envelope into his coat. "Thank you," he said quietly. The man nodded, his eyes tired but relieved. "Don't waste this chance. Life doesn't give many." And then he stood, walked past them, and disappeared into the waking city, leaving them alone by the water, holding the weight of secrets that threatened to change everything. Sandra finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Do we open it now?" Keanu's hand brushed against hers. "Not yet. Let's wait until tonight. If this is what he says it is, then once we open it, we can never go back." Her heart ached at his words, but she knew he was right. Together, they stood in silence, watching the sunrise break fully over the lake. It was beautiful, but it also felt like a warning. Light always reveals what darkness tries to hide. The night of truth, the day passed slowly, as if time itself knew they were carrying a secret too heavy to open under the sun. After leaving the park, Keanu and Sandra walked back to the hotel in silence. Both of them were lost in thought, replaying the words of the old man, replaying the feeling that something important had been taken from them long ago. The envelope now rested in Keanu's coat pocket, its weight pressing against him with every step. Sandra felt it too, not on her body but in her heart. The suspense was unbearable. Why wait until tonight? She asked softly as they entered the quiet lobby of the hotel. Keanu looked at her with calm eyes. Because truth feels heavier in daylight. At night, when the world is quiet, we'll be able to face it without distraction. His words made sense, but they did nothing to slow the pounding of her heart. Back in the hotel room, they sat near the window again. Hours stretched into endless moments. Neither of them could focus on food, or on conversation, or even on the view outside. Their minds circled only one thing, the envelope and what it might hold. At one point, Sandra broke the silence. "Do you think this is really about us? Or just about the film?" Keanu's voice was steady. "Sometimes a film is not just a film. Sometimes it's a mirror. Maybe that's what scares me the most." Her chest tightened at his words. He had always seen deeper than most. The sun eventually slipped below the horizon, painting the sky with red and gold before fading into darkness. The city lights flickered on one by one, like stars being born. Inside the room, the air grew still. Keanu finally stood and placed the old envelope on the table. His hands lingered on it for a moment before he looked at her. "Are you ready?" Sandra's voice shook. "No, but I don't think I'll ever be. So yes." He gave a faint smile, then carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a folded script page, yellowed with age. the paper fragile but intact. He unfolded it slowly, and together they leaned closer to read. The scene was one they remembered filming, but the words were different. It wasn't just about their characters saying goodbye. It was about their characters confessing love. Raw, unguarded, impossible to mistake. As Sandra read the lines aloud, her voice broke. "I can't keep pretending. I loved you before the cameras. I'll love you after they stop. If this is goodbye, let it be the truth, not a lie." Her hands trembled. "I said those words once. I remember. But they cut it." Keanu's eyes darkened with memory. And I answered. "I told you I loved you too. Not just in the scene. I meant it. I really did. But the world never saw it." The room seemed to spin around her. She remembered the day so clearly now. The lights, the director, the sudden decision to reshoot with different lines. She had buried the memory, convincing herself it had only been acting. But reading the words again brought everything back. The way her heart had pounded, the way his eyes had looked into hers, the way it had felt too real to be pretend. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "They stole that from us. They buried it, like it never happened." Keanu's voice was low, almost a whisper. "But we didn't imagine it. It was real. Maybe the most real moment of my life." Sandra covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed by the storm of emotions. Grief for lost years, anger at the silence forced upon them, fear of what this truth now meant. He reached across the table and gently pulled her hands away, his touch steady, grounding her. "Look at me," he said softly. She did, her eyes wet but unflinching. "We can't change the past," he said, "but we can decide what we do with this truth now. Do we let it break us again, or do we let it free us?" Her lips trembled. "Free us to what?" He hesitated, the suspense in his pause louder than any word. Then he answered, calm but certain, to finally stop pretending. The weight of his words pressed against her chest. For years they had lived behind walls, hiding their feelings, convincing themselves that timing had been wrong. Now the truth was in their hands, undeniable, unerasable. But fear was still there, fear of what the world would say, fear of disappointment, fear of being hurt. Sandra whispered, "What if it's too late?" Keanu leaned closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "The only time it's too late is when we stop breathing. Until then, we still have a chance." The emotion in the room was almost too much to hold. Sandra felt her walls shattering piece by piece. She realized she didn't want to keep hiding anymore. She reached for his hand again, but this time not with hesitation. Their fingers locked, strong, certain. And for the first time that night, she felt hope rising above her fear. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, the hotel phone rang. The sharp sound cut through the moment like a blade. They froze. Keanu reached for the phone, his calm unshaken. He lifted the receiver and listened. After a long pause, he said quietly, "We'll be there." Sandra's heart raced. Who was it? He set the phone down, his face unreadable. The man from the park. "He wants us to meet him again. He said tonight. He said, there's more." The suspense thickened once more. Shadows of the past, the phone's silence echoed in the room long after Keanu placed it down. Sandra sat frozen, her hand still in his, her heart pounding like it wanted to escape her chest. "Tonight?" she asked, her voice hushed. Keanu nodded slowly. "Tonight." He said it cannot wait. The weight of those words filled the air. It was no longer only about old memories or a hidden script. Something bigger waited in the shadows. Something the man believed could not stay buried until morning. They left the hotel quietly, blending into the dark city streets. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of rain. Streetlights flickered above them, casting long shadows across the pavement. Sandra's steps were unsteady, but Keanu's calm presence steadied her. He walked close, his hand brushing against hers every few steps, as if reminding her that she was not alone. They reached the meeting place, a deserted street corner near an old theater, its once bright sign broken and dim. The man was already there, leaning against the wall, his face hidden in the shadows. When he stepped forward, the faint light revealed his tired eyes. "You came," he said, his voice low. "Good, because there is more you must know, and this time it's not only about the past. It's about the danger that comes with the truth." Sandra's breath caught. "Danger?" The man nodded. When the studio buried that scene, it wasn't only to change a story. It was to protect people. Powerful people. They were afraid of what it would reveal, not just on screen, but behind it. Keanu's voice was calm but sharp. What could one scene reveal that they feared so much? The man looked at both of them, his face pale under the flickering light. Because it wasn't just acting. They saw what was real between you. They saw your connection, and they knew it would change the way the world saw you. It would change how the world saw them. So they erased it. And they erased anyone who tried to fight against it. Sandra's eyes widened. "Erased? What do you mean?" The man's voice dropped, filled with sorrow. "Careers destroyed. Contracts broken. Silence forced. I lost everything because I tried to protect it. I kept that page hidden all these years. And now, there are people who would do anything to stop you from speaking about it." The suspense thickened like smoke in the air. Keanu's jaw tightened. "You should have told us sooner." The man shook his head. "I thought I could protect you by staying silent. But silence has a way of becoming another kind of prison. I see that now." He reached into his coat again, this time pulling out a small black notebook. "Inside here are names, dates, and proof. If you read it, you'll see how deep this runs. But once you open it, there is no turning back. They will know, and they will come for you." He pressed the notebook into Keanu's hand, his eyes heavy with warning. Keanu accepted it, his calm unbroken. "If it's the truth, then we'll face it." Sandra looked at him, fear rising in her chest. "Keanu, this isn't just about us anymore. What if it's dangerous? What if—" He turned to her, his voice soft but steady. "We've lived too long hiding from fear. If the truth can bring pain, it can also bring freedom. And we can't keep running forever." His words carried weight. Sandra felt her heart ache, torn between fear and the hope of finally breaking free from years of silence. The man stepped back into the shadows. "My part is done. What happens now is in your hands. But remember this. Truth always comes with a price." With that, he disappeared into the night, leaving them alone with the notebook, their breaths clouding in the cold air. Keanu opened the notebook slightly, enough to see the first line. His eyes darkened as he read a single name written inside. He closed it quickly, his voice low. "Someone we know. Someone close." Sandra's chest tightened. "Who?" He shook his head. "Not here, not now. It's too dangerous to say it out loud." They walked back to the hotel in silence, the notebook heavy in his coat pocket. Inside the room, Sandra finally broke the silence. "I'm scared, Keanu. I wanted the truth, but I didn't expect this." He sat beside her, placing the notebook on the table. His hand found hers, warm and steady. "I know, but we face it together. Whatever comes." Her tears slipped quietly down her cheeks. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. For the first time that night she felt safe, even as danger closed in around them. But as the city outside settled into deeper sleep, neither of them noticed the figure standing across the street, watching their hotel window with cold, unblinking eyes. The truth was no longer hidden, and neither were they. Hunted by silence, the night dragged on inside the hotel, but neither Keanu nor Sandra slept. The black notebook lay on the table between them, its presence heavier than anything they had ever faced. Every second that passed made the room feel smaller, as if the truth trapped inside those pages was pressing against the walls. Sandra sat curled on the sofa, her arms wrapped around herself. "I can't stop thinking about what he said. That they will come for us." "Who are they?" Keanu sat across from her, calm but watchful. His voice was steady. "The people who build their power on silence. The people who destroy what they fear. Whoever they are, they've been watching longer than we knew." His calm gave her strength, but the fear in her chest still burned. "What if we open the notebook, and it's worse than we imagine?" she whispered. He looked at her with steady eyes. Then at least we will know. Truth is painful, but lies are poison. We've swallowed poison long enough. Before she could answer, a sharp sound echoed from the hallway. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, stopping just outside their door. Sandra froze, her breath catching. Keanu rose silently, moving to the door. He did not open it, only listened. The footsteps lingered for a moment, then faded away. But both of them knew what it meant. Someone was watching. Someone already knew. Keanu locked the door and returned to her side. His voice was calm, but his eyes carried warning. "We can't stay here much longer." She reached for his hand, her voice trembling. "Then where do we go?" He looked at the notebook. "To the truth. It may be the only safe place left." He opened the notebook fully this time. The pages were filled with names, dates, and hidden deals. Scandals covered in silence. Careers ended by invisible hands. And there, halfway down a page, was a name that made Sandra's blood run cold. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "It can't be." Keanu's eyes darkened. "But it is. The name belonged to someone close, someone they had trusted during the very years they filmed together. Someone who had smiled at them while working to erase their truth." Sandra's tears fell. "They were part of it. They silenced us." Keanu closed the notebook gently, his hand steady on hers. "We can't let them win again. Not this time." But even as he said it, a knock thundered against the door. Louder this time. Demanding. Sandra's heart jumped. "They found us." Keanu stood slowly, his calm unbroken. "Stay here." He approached the door, but before he could reach it, a voice spoke from the other side, low, commanding. "You have something that doesn't belong to you. Open the door and hand it over. This is your only warning." Sandra's breath came fast, fear surging through her. "Keanu, what do we do?" He looked at her, his calm eyes steady. "We don't give them what they want." The knock grew louder, the voice harsher. "Open it now, or we will." Keanu moved quickly, pulling Sandra toward the back exit of the suite. "We leave now." They slipped into the hallway, silent and swift. Behind them, the sound of the door being forced open thundered through the air. They ran down the stairwell, the notebook clutched tightly in Keanu's hand. The hotel that had once felt like a shelter now felt like a cage, filled with unseen eyes. They reached the street, the cold night air hitting their faces. Sandra's heart raced, but Keanu's steady grip on her hand pulled her forward. "Where are we going?" she asked breathlessly. "Somewhere they won't expect," he answered. They disappeared into the sleeping city, shadows among shadows. But the watcher from earlier was not far behind. In the darkness, the figure spoke quietly into a device. "They have the notebook. Prepare for containment." Sandra clutched Keanu's hand tighter, her fear mixing with something stronger. Resolve. She looked at him, her voice shaking but determined. "We can't just run forever. We have to fight back." He met her gaze, his calm unshaken. "We will, but first we survive the night." The city stretched out before them, full of secrets and danger. The truth was no longer only on paper, it was alive, and it was chasing them. The choice of dawn. The night stretched on as Keanu and Sandra moved through the quiet city streets, every shadow carrying danger, every sound making their hearts quicken. The notebook remained in Keanu's hand, its pages heavy with names and secrets. They found refuge in an old library near the edge of town, its doors unlocked, its halls dark but welcoming. The silence inside was thick, but it felt safer than the streets. Sandra sank into a chair, her body trembling. "How much longer can we keep running?" Keanu placed the notebook on the table, his calm never wavering. "Not much longer. Which means we need to decide what matters more, our safety or the truth." She looked at him, her tears shimmering in the dim light. "And what if telling the truth destroys us?" His eyes softened, full of quiet strength. "Then at least it will be real. No more lies, no more hiding. Just us, standing together." She felt her chest tighten. For so many years, she had been afraid of risk, afraid of losing what little stability she had. But tonight, She realized that silence had cost her more than risk ever could. Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed through the library. They weren't alone. Keanu moved closer to her, shielding her with his presence. From the shadows, the Watcher stepped forward. Tall, cold, eyes sharp with purpose. "Give me the notebook," the Watcher demanded, his voice steady but ruthless. "You don't know what you're holding. This will ruin lives." Keanu's voice was calm, firm. "The lives already ruined by silence don't matter to you?" The Watcher's jaw tightened. "This is bigger than you. Bigger than her. Hand it over and walk away alive." Sandra stood slowly, her fear trembling but her voice steady. "We've lived in silence for too long. If truth ruins powerful people but saves hearts like ours, then let it ruin them." The Watcher's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, but Keanu did not move. Instead, he opened the notebook and tore out one page, holding it up. "You can destroy us," he said quietly, "but you can't destroy what has already been written. The truth doesn't die when you burn paper. It lives in memory, in people, in voices." His calm words struck harder than any shout. The Watcher froze, his certainty shaken. In that pause, Sandra moved to Keanu's side, her hand slipping into his. She whispered, "We choose the truth." Together, they walked past the Watcher, their steps slow but unbroken. Outside, the first light of dawn began to break, painting the sky with pale gold. They knew danger still lingered. They knew the fight was not over. But something inside them had changed. They were no longer two people hiding behind walls. They were two souls who had finally chosen honesty, even when it carried risk. As they stepped into the morning light, Sandra looked at Keanu with tears in her eyes. "We lost years, but maybe we found the courage to live the rest without fear." Keanu's faint smile was calm, steady. "Then let's live it, together." Their hands tightened, not as actors, not as old friends, but as two people finally free from silence. The city stirred awake around them, unaware of the war fought in the shadows that night. But for Keanu and Sandra, it was enough. They had faced the darkness, chosen the truth, and found each other again.